I remember the sound my bones made when I hit the ground. It was softer than I expected, like snapping twigs in wet soil. They said I fell. They said I must have leaned too far over the balcony. But I know what I saw. I saw my brother's hands and the smile he tried to hide. Months later, he returned to the house, inheritance finally his. Only I was already inside, watching from the shadows. You see, I never really left, and now I want everything he took from me, my life, my name, my truth. And this time, I won't fall. This time, someone else will. The first thing people said when they saw our family portrait was always the same. What a beautiful family. They never looked close enough to notice that my smile never quite reached my eyes, or that I stood slightly off-center as if I didn't belong. On the surface, we were perfect. An oceanfront estate, a respected family name, and 2 children who never publicly fought. But the cracks were always there. I just learned early on to keep quiet and smile through them. At my father's memorial, Carter delivered a eulogy so moving that several guests cried. He spoke about legacy, about carrying on my father's work, about family unity. When he said my name, my sister Emily, the quiet strength of this household, his voice even cracked. Everyone applauded when he stepped down. I didn't. I stood silently at the back, my hands clasped in front of me, dressed in black. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I watched Carter receive hug after hug, bask in the spotlight, soak up their sympathy like a sponge. That was his gift. He could break a person in 2, then make the world feel sorry for him. Later that evening, I wandered through the upstairs hallway, past the framed memories of a childhood I never quite lived. There was a new portrait on the wall, larger than the rest. My father, Carter, and me, except something was off. I stepped closer. My face had been blurred. Not entirely, just slightly out of focus, like an old photograph gone soft around the edges. Someone had digitally altered the image, and no one had noticed. Or worse, they had, and didn't care. I found the letter in my father's study, hidden behind a row of outdated ledgers. The envelope had my name, handwritten in his sharp, slanted script. My pulse raced as I slid a letter opener beneath the flap. But when I pulled the paper out, it was blank. Someone had replaced the contents with a sheet of empty stationery. I stared at the envelope, heart thudding. I knew it had been meant for me. I also knew who had gotten to it first. The next morning, Carter sat across from me at the kitchen table with a fresh pot of coffee and a lawyer at his side. "I thought we'd get the paperwork started," he said casually, sliding a folder toward me. "You'll still get the trust fund, but the house, the land, it makes more sense under my name. Taxes, you know." "I'm not signing anything today," I replied. The lawyer raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Carter smiled, tight-lipped. "Of course, no pressure. We just want to move forward, right?" That evening, I found our mother's cat curled up on the rug, unmoving. I crouched down. Its eyes were glassy, tongue slightly out. Poison. I could smell it before I saw the traces of white powder in the dish beside it. No one else seemed alarmed. Carter said the cat had been old, but she was healthy just yesterday. I knew that cat. She never ate anything she didn't trust. That night, I dreamed of my father. He sat in his old armchair, wrapped in his favorite sweater, the one that still smelled like cedar and smoke. He looked tired but peaceful. "Don't trust him," he said. "Not even for a second. You need to disappear." Then he looked at me with something like sorrow. "You've always been stronger than he thought." I woke up to the sound of thunder. Rain lashed the windows. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked out onto the balcony outside my room, barefoot, drawn by something I couldn't explain. The wind smelled like salt and electricity. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. "Carter?" I turned. He stepped into view, hands in the pockets of his tailored slacks. He was calm, too calm. "You should go back inside," he said. "Why?" I asked, suddenly aware of how high we were, how slick the railing felt beneath my hand. "It's not safe out here," he said and took a step forward. "You might slip." I backed up. My heel hit something soft, one of the cushions from the outdoor chairs. I stumbled. Carter's hand reached out, not to catch me, but to push. As I fell, I heard him whisper, "If only you'd signed." Then everything went black. There was no scream, no flailing. Just air, then silence. For a moment, I thought I was dead. Then came the sound. Not mine, but mechanical cold, insistent. Beep, 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 flatline. When I opened my eyes, the ceiling above me was too white, too sterile. The beep of machines filled the room, rhythmic and distant, like waves crashing on a foreign shore. My body ached, head heavy, throat raw. A soft rustle beside me made me turn. "Carter, you're awake," he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You slipped, Em." "The balcony. It was raining. You don't remember?" I stared at him, trying to read between the lines of his performance. His concern was practiced, rehearsed. I said nothing. A knock interrupted us. A woman in a gray suit stepped in, clipboard in hand. Her name tag read, Dr. Simone Beckett, Psychiatry. "Emily," she said too gently, like I was a bomb about to go off. "We've been monitoring you closely. There's been concern about your mental state." I blinked. "She's confused," Carter cut in quickly. "We've had incidents before. When she was 15, there was an episode. She attacked me with scissors." "That never happened. She's always struggled with reality," he added. "Stress makes it worse." My mouth was dry, but I managed. "That's not true." Dr. Beckett made a note. "Sometimes trauma distorts memory. We just want to help you, Emily." They had built an entire history I couldn't disprove. There were records, signed statements, even photos of me in hospital gowns I'd never worn. Carter had rewritten my past. And yet, I didn't fight it. I played along. I nodded when they asked if I was confused. I cried on cue. I let them drug me lightly, just enough to make me appear compliant. They thought they had me pinned. They thought I was broken. They were wrong. On my third night, just after midnight, a nurse came in to check my vitals. She didn't speak. She adjusted the IV, then slipped a folded note into my palm before walking out. It read, "I know who you are. Don't talk. Meet me in the laundry room. 2 a.m. Alone." At exactly 2 o'clock, I shuffled through the dim hallway in hospital slippers, heart pounding. The laundry room smelled like bleach and forgotten stories. The nurse was there, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "I'm Nora," she said. "I worked for your family once. Years ago." I stayed silent. "I know what Carter did to you," she continued, "and what he did to others. You're not the first." She told me about a girl named Haley, Carter's ex. She had vanished after accusing him of violence. Her body was never found, but her car was discovered submerged in a lake. No suspects, no charges. Just a closed file and a grieving family. Nora had tried to speak out once. Carter discredited her, branded her as unstable. She lost her license. Now, she worked under the radar, helping patients the system failed. "I've been waiting for a chance like this," she said. "And you're the first who's smart enough to fake being broken." We made a plan. 3 days later, they wheeled me out under a white sheet, my body escorted to the hospital morgue. But it wasn't me. It was a Jane Doe from a nearby accident, unclaimed, her injuries matching mine closely enough to fool a brief inspection. The scar on her arm, surgically replicated from a photo of mine. Meanwhile, I walked out the back in scrubs and a surgical mask, head down, Nora beside me. Carter held a press conference the following evening. His eyes glistened as he spoke about loss, about tragedy, about his sweet, broken sister who never quite found peace. He even live-streamed part of the service, receiving condolences from across the country. He cried on cue. The world wept with him. But I was watching. From a cheap motel room, I sat in the dark and watched him lie. Then I listened. Because before I left, I had planted a small recording device in the vent above his bedroom, a place he thought was safe. Each night, I heard him talk, sometimes to himself, sometimes on calls. He spoke of cleaning up loose ends, of a woman named Nora, of a new problem that needed fixing. "I should have finished the job," he said once, voice low and bitter. I knew she'd come back to haunt me. He didn't know how right he was. The first sign that I wasn't quite gone came from a gas station in a town 2 states away. I stood in view of the security camera for exactly 10 seconds, long enough for the footage to go viral when it leaked online. The timestamp was recent, days after my funeral. The comments flooded in. "That's her, Emily Graves? Is this a ghost? Staged? Deep fake? What if she's not dead?" People started to question the narrative. "And Carter?" He started to sweat. I changed my name to Anna Hart and dyed my hair a deep chestnut brown. With a pair of contact lenses, a new ID, and a soft Southern accent, I became someone else entirely. I moved into a modest apartment 2 towns over and introduced myself as a freelance journalist doing research on inheritance fraud and missing women. The first step was bait. I walked into a small law firm known for representing estate disputes and asked to speak with the youngest associate on staff. Someone hungry, someone not yet cynical. Her name was Mallory Voss, and she had the kind of ambition that made people dangerous in the right hands. I told her I was researching a story based on personal experience. My older brother had manipulated our father's will, stolen my inheritance, and tried to erase my existence. "I need legal advice," I said, eyes downcast. "But more than that, I need to tell the world what he did." Mallory listened. She took notes. She offered her card and promised confidentiality. She didn't know she was being tested. I needed to know how far I could trust her before I gave her the real truth. And until then, I had another plan to set in motion. The TikTok account I created used a voice filter, blurred visuals, and the handle, Justice for Sister. The first video was only 30 seconds long, a static image, a caption. He said it was an accident, but I saw him push her. Then came the second video, more suggestive. A story of 2 siblings, the golden boy, the forgotten girl. A death that wasn't really a death. I never used names, never dates. Just enough breadcrumbs for the internet to start connecting dots. And they did. Comments exploded. Theories emerged. People pulled old news articles about Emily Graves' death, then matched her voice in public interviews to snippets I let leak. Reddit threads called it the sister scam. Others called it Gravesgate. The virality was inevitable. True crime junkies, armchair detectives, conspiracy theorists, everyone wanted a piece. Some believed it was fiction. Some swore it was real. But all of them were talking. And Carter? He couldn't control that kind of chaos. I received an unmarked call late one night. I hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice came through, trembling slightly. "Anna," or should I say, "Emily." I didn't speak. "I know you're alive, and I know why he did it." "Who is this?" I asked, my stomach turning. "I'm not a threat. I'm your mother." My breath caught. "I don't mean the woman who raised you," she continued. "I mean the one who gave birth to you. I was forced to give you up when I was 17. I've been watching you from a distance for years." "You're lying." "I can prove it. The day you fell from the balcony, you were wearing a necklace, silver with a blue stone. I gave that to the Graves family when they adopted you. No one else would know that." My hands trembled. "Why now?" I asked. "Because the wrong child was chosen," she whispered. "And now he's becoming what his father always feared." She hung up. I stared at my reflection in the darkened laptop screen, tears streaking down my face. Everything I thought I knew was breaking apart. That night, I sat in front of the camera and recorded a new message. "You've been following my story, you've seen the clues, but I need to tell you something, and not all of it is what you think." Carter, meanwhile, was unraveling. He'd started seeing me, or something like me, everywhere, in the mirrors, in crowds, in his dreams. He started calling our old housekeeper in the middle of the night, demanding to know if she'd seen anyone near the estate. He wasn't sleeping. A journalist named Calvin Finch contacted him, requesting an interview about the Graves estate. When Finch mentioned the possibility of an earlier, hidden version of the will, Carter snapped. He threatened to sue. Then he hung up and destroyed a hard drive. But it was too late. Nora, the nurse who had helped fake my death, had never truly disappeared. Carter thought she was gone. Killed, discarded, no longer a problem. But she had only gone underground, and she'd kept a backup of everything. I met her in a diner 3 towns over. She slid me a flash drive and said only, "Don't listen to what he says. Listen to what he whispers." On the audio file, Carter could be heard pacing in his bedroom. "She should have signed," he muttered. "I gave her a chance. I always give them a chance. They say no, and then, what do they expect?" There was a pause. "I don't miss," he said. The next day, I stood on a ridge across from the estate, the place where it all began. The wind was cold, biting. The sun setting behind the house turned the windows blood red. I whispered, "Tomorrow night, I'm walking back in, like I never died at all." The lights in the auction house were dim but elegant, reflecting off the glass cases and polished floors. I moved through the crowd in a black satin dress, heels clicking softly against marble, my hair now short and swept back. No one recognized me, yet. But he would. When Carter walked in, flanked by 2 advisors and a woman clinging to his arm, he scanned the room like a king surveying his court. His eyes brushed over me once, paused, then darted away. A blink. A twitch. He looked again, slower this time. His face drained of color. I turned slightly, let the light catch the edge of my cheekbone. He froze. I raised my paddle. Lot 47. Seaward. A seascape oil painting once owned by the Graves patriarch painted the year I was born, my father's favorite. Carter had sold it off 2 years ago in a private transaction. It had somehow resurfaced, and now it was mine. The bidding started. Carter jumped in immediately, voice strained. 10,000. 15, I said, calm and cool. His head jerked slightly. He wasn't sure. 25, he shot back. 50, I countered louder. Gasps rippled through the room. The auctioneer blinked, then nodded. 50,000 going once. Carter didn't bid again. The hammer dropped. The painting was mine. I turned and walked right past him, slow and deliberate. He didn't move, didn't breathe. The woman beside him looked between us, confused. Carter's knuckles were white on the chair. That night, the latest episode of my podcast dropped. The audio was crisp, my voice steady. "He's done this before," I said, "and this time the truth won't stay buried." I told the story of a young man named Julian who vanished when Carter was 20. They had been roommates, some claimed lovers. Julian had confided in friends that he feared Carter. Then he disappeared. No one connected the dots. The case went cold. But I had the police report, a copy of the 911 call, a witness statement from Julian's sister. I had a photo of Julian's ring, found in Carter's old dorm drawer. My inbox exploded, messages poured in. TikTok clipped the podcast. Reddit had an entire thread breaking down timelines. Hashtags trended. Justice for Julian. Carter Graves' family secrets. In the final seconds of the episode, I spoke directly into the mic. "Carter, I know you're listening. You know who I am." Then I went live. The camera framed my face tightly. I stared directly ahead, unflinching. "You remember the balcony," I said. "You remember my screams." Pause. "And now you'll remember this. I'm not gone. I'm not afraid. I'm not your victim." The stream ended. Carter called an emergency press conference the next day. He looked disheveled, the first cracks showing. "She's a fraud," he insisted, "a look-alike exploiting my family's pain. My sister is dead. I buried her myself." He brought out a copy of my supposed death certificate. He waved photographs, but the crowd didn't buy it, not anymore. Not after the painting, not after the podcast. He tried to leave for Portugal that night, a one-way flight, first class. But when he reached the airport, his accounts were frozen, his passport flagged. I'd contacted our family's former attorney, Mr. Halverson, weeks before. He had known the truth about the forged will but stayed quiet out of fear. I'd offered him something better, immunity and protection. And guilt is a powerful motivator. He provided the original will, the one naming me as sole heir. A notarized copy with our father's signature and fingerprint, a document Carter had hidden for years. I sent it directly to the authorities, along with a full timeline supporting audio and witness statements. A warrant was issued by morning, but when officers arrived at Carter's estate, it was empty. He was gone, his phone left behind on the kitchen counter, still buzzing with missed calls. The final camera footage showed him exiting through the garden gate just after 3 a.m., alone, wearing black. I stood across the street in a parked car, watching the lights go out. Tomorrow, the world would know everything. But tonight, I waited in the dark, letting it all sink in. Emily Graves was about to come back from the dead. They found Carter 3 days later, half naked and raving in a motel outside Bakersfield. He was curled in the corner of the room, muttering to the wall, shaking, pupils dilated. The police report listed substance influence, but the arresting officer told reporters he kept repeating one name over and over. Mine. "She's not gone," he whispered. "She's watching." He fought them at first, scratching, clawing. But once cuffed, he slumped like a rag doll and went eerily quiet. The booking photo would later circulate online. Gaunt, eyes hollow, his carefully maintained image shattered. The courtroom was packed for the trial. Media vans lined the block. Spectators camped overnight for a seat inside. It had become more than a family feud. It was a national obsession. When I walked into that courtroom, every head turned. I didn't hide behind sunglasses or anonymity. I wore a dark blazer, hair clean and neat, no trace of the bruised girl from the balcony. I was there not as a ghost, but as a woman who refused to disappear. The prosecution wasted no time. Audio recordings, financial trails, forged documents, photos, testimony from Nora, the original will, the podcast confession. It was all there, woven together in a damning timeline. But the moment that broke the jury came from someone no one had expected. Mr. Dorsey, the old gardener. I remembered him vaguely, a quiet man who trimmed the hedges, repaired broken sprinklers, never spoke unless spoken to. He had been let go 2 years ago when Carter took over the estate. Now, standing at the witness box in his faded coat, he cleared his throat. "I saw him do it," he said. Gasps filled the room. "It was raining that night," he continued. "I was fixing a drainage pipe below the balcony. I looked up, and I saw Carter. He pushed her." The silence was deafening. He had never told anyone. He was afraid. He thought no one would believe the gardener over the golden boy. But he had seen everything. The judge called for order. Carter's attorney looked like he might vomit. I didn't move. I just stared straight ahead, hands folded in my lap. When it came time for Carter's defense, he didn't deny it. He laughed. Sitting there in the defendant's chair in his rumpled suit and unshaven face, he laughed like someone who had already lost everything. "She's not even real," he said, pointing at me. "That thing, she's not Emily. Emily died. I made sure of it." I didn't flinch. The judge ordered the jury to deliberate. As the courtroom emptied, Carter leaned in toward me, eyes wild. "You still don't know everything," he hissed. "You think this is over? You really don't know, do you?" I said nothing. The verdict came that evening, guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, fraud, tampering with legal documents, obstruction. He was sentenced to 40 years without the possibility of parole. The headlines screamed justice. Graves air sentenced. Golden boy falls. Sister survives, exposes family's darkest secrets. I returned to the estate alone. The locks had been changed, the house cleaned, the staff long gone. I walked through each room slowly, as if greeting ghosts. My fingers grazed the edge of picture frames, shelves, the door to my father's study. In that study, beneath a loose floorboard, I found something unexpected. A journal. My father's handwriting, neat and crisp, but the entries near the end were erratic, paranoid, scared. He wrote of feeling sick, hallucinating. He suspected someone was drugging him. One entry stopped my breath. She said it was for his own good, said he needed help letting go of the company. She kissed my cheek and poured the tea. I didn't drink it. There was a drawing, a symbol he used for her, a simple M mother, but she had died years ago. Or had she? My mind spun. If he was poisoned, it wasn't Carter. Not directly. He wasn't smart enough. But she was. I flipped to the back of the journal where he had taped a photograph. An old family picture, one I had never seen before. Me, Carter, and someone else. A woman I didn't recognize at first. Her face was turned slightly blurry, but the eyes, the shape of her mouth. It was the woman who had called me weeks ago, claiming to be my birth mother. Except in this photo, she stood behind us like she belonged there. My breath caught. I stared harder. It wasn't a blurry image. It was intentional. She had been scrubbed from every version I remembered. I held the photo closer, heart pounding, because now I wasn't sure if the woman in that photo was the same woman buried in our family plot. For a long time, I thought freedom would come from uncovering every secret. I believed if I could expose every lie, bring every ghost into the light, I would finally be free. But the truth is, some ghosts don't need an audience. Some only need to be released. I never found out exactly what happened to my father. I never confirmed who poisoned him, or why the woman who claimed to be my mother looked identical to a figure from my childhood memories. There were still cracks in the timeline, unanswered questions buried beneath years of silence and fear. But I stopped digging, not because I was afraid, but because I chose not to let those questions define the rest of my life. The final episode of the podcast aired on a Sunday evening. It was titled simply, Surviving Emily. I didn't use voice modulation. I didn't blur my face. I sat in front of a simple background, a single lamp behind me, and told the story from the beginning. My voice steady, my face bare. I didn't cry. I was pushed, I said. I survived. But what matters more is what happened after. Not just to me, but to the people I met, the ones who helped me, the ones who reminded me I wasn't crazy or broken or invisible. They helped me rebuild. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was a reclamation. The episode went viral within hours. News outlets picked it up. Mental health advocates began sharing clips. Messages flooded in, not just from survivors of abuse, but from people who had spent their lives doubting their own memories. In the days that followed, I launched a private support group called The Unseen, a digital sanctuary for people who had lived through gaslighting, emotional manipulation, psychological erasure. We met once a week over Zoom, strangers from all over the world sharing fragments of stories too long kept hidden. And then I posed the question, if someone tried to erase you, I said at the end of one session, if someone tried to kill you for your silence and you survived, would you forgive them? There was a long pause, and then, one by one, answers came in. Some were angry, some confused, some heartbreaking. But all were honest. I never said what my answer was. Instead, I let it live inside the work I was doing. In the legal system, I was Emily Graves, rightful heir, victim of attempted murder, survivor. But outside those walls, in the life I was rebuilding, I became someone new. I chose the name Eve. It was the name of the protagonist in a novel I had started writing years before, back when I still believed my world was safe and whole. Eve had been quiet, like me, forgotten, like me. But in the end, Eve had risen. I published the novel 6 months after the trial. The Balcony climbed bestseller lists within weeks. Critics called it haunting, triumphant, a modern tragedy with a quiet, radiant hope. But the ones who wrote to me directly, the ones who had lived through something similar, they knew. They saw through the fiction. They recognized the truth hiding between the lines. One morning, I returned to the cemetery on the edge of the town where everything began. I wore a soft gray coat, no makeup, a notebook tucked under my arm. I stopped in front of my father's grave. The wind rustled the dry leaves around my feet. I opened the old journal he had left behind and turned to the first page. You will be the sole survivor of us all. I read aloud. You will be the one who survives us all. He had known somehow. Even as the people closest to him betrayed him, even as his health failed and his voice was taken from him, he had seen something in me. Maybe he hadn't always known how to show it. Maybe he'd made mistakes. but that sentence was real. I closed the journal and whispered, "I did, Dad. I did survive." As I turned to leave, I felt it, that subtle prickling of awareness, the sense of being watched. Across the road, near the line of trees bordering the cemetery, a woman stood. She wore a long coat. Her hair was dark, swept back, not unlike mine. She didn't move, just stood with her arms folded, gaze steady. Too far to make out the features exactly. But the posture, the presence. A piece of me froze. Was she real? A memory come to life? A mother lost? Or a mirror of myself? A reminder of what might have been? I took a step forward. She smiled. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away. I didn't follow, because I didn't need to.